Hey guys, welcome to the video. We're continuing our journey through exploring what Copilot Studio has to offer for us, and we're keeping our focus on going beyond what the average build an agent sort of workflow would look like, right? And the reason why we're focusing on this is in the real world, when we start building these things, IT would typically start pushing back because we have the scenario where how do I monitor things and how do I know when something's going wrong? So it's I don't want to call them enterprise issues, but let's call them responsible development issues, right? So how do we build stuff that's sustainable, that we can track, that we can understand what's happening when something goes wrong? How do we look at that? Those kind of things, right? And that's really the focus on today's conversation. So I want to take a look at if we're building agents and we've got agent upon agent upon agent running, how do we know what's going on? So our focus today is going to be around, well, what do we get out of the box? Just taking a look at sort of from a user interface perspective, what Copilot gives us, but also and particularly, I want to focus on looking at Azure Application Insights, right? So I've already set up an App Insights instance for us. So I'm just going to zoom in a little bit. For those of you who don't know what Application Insights is in the pro code world, what we like to do is we call it instrumenting our applications, right? So when somebody clicks on a button, right, it says, all right, well, 50 people keep clicking on this button of the 70 users we have, and so on and so forth. But very importantly, it allows us to go and look at our logs. Now, my log should be empty, right? So we shouldn't have too much going on at the moment. But what we want to do is, as we're calling our agents, as we're engaging with our agents, we want the ability to have these logs. And the great thing about Application Insights, as with most sort of logging frameworks and open telemetry frameworks in sort of the modern day, is that these logs can be structured. So just to give you a quick example of what that would look like, if I go to my traces, obviously I pick something that has nothing. So we'll take a look at what this looks like in a second. But it's this idea that I have columns and I can filter and those kind of things. So it's very, very easy for me to go and find information. So what does this look like from an Application Insights perspective, right? So if I go to an agent, and I go to my NCCD Support Assistant, which is something I'm building for the education space. It's quite an interesting little agent. If I go to Settings and I go to Advanced, I've got this Application Insights, send telemetry to Application Insights for your organization, and I need a connection string, right? So obviously, you would to actually get this functionality, you need an Azure subscription, and you need an App Insights instance running. Now, these things are ridiculously cheap to run, but they do add quite a lot of value. And what's nice about it is I can connect multiple agents to the same Azure Application Insights instance. So I'm just going to copy that and I'm going to paste it in there. So before we carry on too much further, I think it's worth knowing that this doesn't only apply to Copilot Studio, right? So if I've got an AI strategy where I've got a few low-code agents running, and we do have a few pro-code solutions, perhaps stuff running in Azure Functions or some bespoke application that we've built, we can surface all our application sort of telemetry to the same point. Like, that's the whole point of this space, is that I get to go and monitor all of my application information in the same place. So I'm just going to quickly close that, copy that, close this one, and we will give it a minute to load, and then we will test the agent. So we'll see here that we've got the NCCD public website. We have a NCCD adjustment Dataverse table that we're looking at. We have the MCP server that should be disabled. And we have the add NCCD to the register, right? So that's a flow. So let me just see what's happening here. All right, we can keep that one enabled. All right, let's just keep it as it is. when we're engaging our agent, what we'd want to see perhaps is, all right, it's fine for users to talk to the language model. It's fine for users to go and query the data sources that we've given them. But when does this agent actually take action? All right, so that's the big thing we want to see. What we're expecting to see is that when I call my MCP server, that I've got an example of that, or I've got a record of that in my application insights list. So if I have to go and say, please register an adjustment for Steve Smith and using for an emotional ability with QDTP adjustment level. All right, let's quickly fix these up. All right, if we click on send here, what's going to happen is this will start, running through and showing us what it's doing. Let me just allow that one. All right, we'll see here that it calls this guy. It basically goes and creates the record, lists the table, and it'll give us the record in the Dataverse, right? So fantastic, right? That's nice and easy. We don't have to go into Dataverse and basically check all these things, but yeah, it's basically registered this into the Dataverse table. Now, what we're expecting to see is if I go to my Application Insights instance and I go to logs, that I get to see what this particular agent has done. Now, I believe it would be under custom events. All right, and we can see here that we've got a bot message sent, bot message received. Right, so if I go and just go say, filter this to the local time, and it's 12:23, so 8, so let's just do that way, the other way around. This will now start breaking down exactly what it goes step by step, right? So every step that's recorded. Now we don't have control over what's recorded. That's Microsoft's thing, but we get to see what it's done, right? So basically it receives the message. We can see here that I think it is the role name, role instance, right, would be our NCCD support agent. Why that's important is I can say, well, go show me all Copilot Studio and go and group this by my particular agent. That's particularly useful. And if I go and expand custom dimensions, which is extra metadata that Microsoft and the Copilot team sends to Application Insights on our behalf, it would be the channel ID would be PVA Studio. So that's obviously the virtual agent, legacy virtual agent studio. We can see here that the recipient name is the support assistant. So this, you'll notice that is the internal name of my the item in my solution, and those kind of things, right? But pretty cool conversation ID, so that's great. I can trace all things across a conversation, and yeah, it's just generally good information. Now, on average, you don't care about this until something goes wrong, which is really, if we want to think about building solutions that are scalable and maintainable in our organization, that's the big thing, right? What happens when something goes wrong? So just to quickly go through what this looks like, I've got a topic start, same type of information. We can see here that it's got the main trigger. And if I go to my topic action, I can see, go to my custom dimensions, what we're hoping, we've got conversation start. And what else can we find here? We've got this IP we don't care about. Okay, let's just expand that one. I was hoping to see an actual call to the MCP server, but that might just not be logged, right? In an upcoming video, I'm going to talk about different ways of working with the Dataverse because of little issues that I found like this with the MCP server. MCP server is great, by the way. It's really, really cool and really, really easy to set up. But it does come with a few drawbacks that we need to discuss. So yeah, and then the bot message, it obviously gives us the response. and then obviously just the text that it will send back to us. So this is really, really useful. Obviously, if you've got an IT team that needs you to do something a bit more, like asks you questions that IT really should be asking, to avoid stuff like agent sprawl and us, too many people creating too many agents, which is a risk. And I know it might be a controversial view, but what I'm really trying to do is help everybody build things in a responsible way to get to production faster. So I hope that was useful. And yeah, I'll be back with another video shortly talking about Dataverse specifically. So until then, see you later.